All right, can I have everybody's attention, please? Students. Thank you. I wanted to welcome the classes of 1954, 1959, 1964, 1969, and the 50th anniversary class of 1974. I see some familiar faces in there, but for those anniversary classes that don't know me, I am Dr. Vincent Harper. I'm the principal of Bishop McDevitt at the current time. Unfortunately, there are no representatives from the classes of 1944 and 1949, but we remember and recognize their contributions to our Catholic High, Bishop McDevitt, and to the world, as many of them helped defend our liberties. I would like to first thank Mr. John Brooksis for his historical research of Catholic High and Bishop McDevitt. The account through the decades provides our anniversary classes and our current students with an historical perspective of the time and traditions of our alma mater. We start with the class of 1954, born during the Great Depression. You remember those days when the world and the United States of America opposed communism, and the Communist Control Act outlawed the Communist Party in the US. Polio, the dreaded children's disease, was being defeated with 2 vaccines, but to be careful, lung x-rays were taken at school if you and your fellow students. As immigration had slowed after World War II, the main port of entry, Ellis Island, was to be closed. Teenagers were doing the jitterbug to hit songs like Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and the Comets. Fast food was launched as Burger King opened its first restaurant in Miami, Florida, and making home dining easier, the TV dinner was introduced by year's end. If you were looking to drive the family car to the prom, you had to save your pennies for gas, which was 21 cents a gallon. The family car, if new, cost around $1,700. As you reflect on your years at Catholic High, and especially your senior year, you will remember rosary assemblies, magazine drives, free day to highest homeroom, and of course, Mother Concilia, who kept everyone in line. Mr. Russ Williams led the band as they marched for your football games and in community parades. Who from your class could forget the new band front uniforms and those white fur hats with blue flumes? If you had any time left over from your studies and school activities, you could check out the newfangled box in the living room called a television. Channel 71 had a show, High Times, and there was WHP TV Teen time on Friday afternoons, often highlighting your fellow students. On graduation, you probably sported the class ring. Your class was the first to wear a new design which lasted for years. The ring would usually cost you less than $20. Even then, not everyone could afford one. Would the class of 1954 please raise your hand or stand? Thank you. Let us remember and thank the class of 1954 for their service and loyalty to Catholic High, their religion, and their country. Thank you. In 1959, there were a number of world-shaking power displays, one leading to the Cuban Revolution and one to a crushed Tibetan rebellion against China's annexation of Tibet that caused its religious leader, the Dalai Lama, to flee and remain in exile to this day. On the lighter side, the Barbie doll came on the market, and 65 years later, we get the Barbie movie. You remember that Alaska and Hawaii were admitted respectively as our 49th and 50th states. Movie tickets were $1 and cars averaged $2,200. The United States was entering the space race with the birth of NASA in October, and 6 months later, the introduction of the first Mercury 7 astronauts, which included John Glenn and Alan Shepard. Jet-age air travel was progressing as Pan Am flew its first transatlantic jet from New York to Paris, and Boeing 707 came into service. Blockbuster movies were the order of the day. Ben-Hur was one of the biggest hits of all time. The Chariot Race remains a classic. TV sported The Twilight Zone in black and white, one of the more realistic sci-fi TV series. The election of Pope John XXIII was held on October 28, 1958. He succeeded Pope Pius XII, who had reigned since 1939. On January 25, 1959, Pope John XXIII announced his intention to convoke an ecumenical council, later Vatican II. On October 6, 1957, during your junior year, Catholic High became Bishop McDevitt. Later, Father Gribben succeeded Father Shaw, who directed the senior play, Little Dog Laughed. Mary Louise Duffy and Frank Testa dazzled the audience as leads. Rob McAvoy premiered as student council president, while Patricia Manning was your teen queen. After 3 consecutive years as Catholic League champs, the diocesan trophy became permanent possession of McDevitt. You were actively working to keep Christ in Christmas, and the essay winner was Mary Drobniak. On the basketball court, James Murphy was selected as National High School All-American Center First Team, the only Pennsylvania player to receive this award. Mr. Les Gianni was selected Coach of the Year by the Old Timers Club of Harrisburg. The band and band front, with 110 members, was the largest in the school's history. Outgrowing the Hershey Hotel, the junior-senior prom was moved to the Colonial Country Club, and pre-prom visits to the convent were always expected. With the class of 1959, please raise your hand or stand. Thank you. Thank you for your contributions to Catholic High and Bishop McDevitt. By 1964, the world stage was explosive. The war was escalating in Vietnam, and Congress authorized our entry with the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution in the summer after your graduation. The future would see negative reaction to the war with protests and the burning of draft cards. In August 1963, Martin Luther King, who was later nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, closing the Civil Rights March on Washington. The movement culminated in the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Tragedy entered our lives when the charismatic Catholic president, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated on November 22, 1963, prompting the Warren Commission. Of lesser gravity, Beatlemania was taking hold in the United States. The Beatles performed live on The Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964. In the same month, Cassius Clay, who later changed his name to Muhammad Ali, beat Sonny Liston to claim the heavyweight champion of the world title. Sidney Poitier was the first African American to win the Best Actor award for his role in Lilies of the Field. Mary Poppins premiered and eventually became Disney's biggest moneymaker. It won 5 Academy Awards. The Great Alaskan Earthquake, with a 9.2 magnitude, occurred on Good Friday. Gasoline for your car, which cost approximately $3,500, was now a whopping 30 cents a gallon. Bread was still 21 cents a loaf. At McDevitt, as word of President Kennedy's assassination spread, a school assembly featuring the University of Scranton Glee Club turned mournful. The entire school of 2,000 students, under the direction of Mother Marie Francois, prayed the rosary for the repose of President Kennedy's soul. The Glee Club's final number, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, left all awash in tears. Language labs were opened in the new wing, and the first issue of the school's literary magazine, Ibis, was published in November. Of course, you can never forget the 500-word essays doled out as punishment by Mr. Zuvich. Yours was the first class to include a full school drama, a Shakespearean arts festival. Your commencement, which took place for the first time at the Farm Show, saw 462 graduates, second largest only to the class of 1965. Trinity High School had opened to freshmen and sophomores in 1963. As a senior, you would finish your secondary education where you began it, in the Twin Towers School. With the class of 1964, please raise your hand or stand. Class of 1969, your graduation year was eventful in the United States and the world. In November, you watched as 3 astronauts aboard Apollo 8, Jim Lovell, Bill Anders, and Frank Borman, became the first humans to orbit the moon. 8 months later, Apollo 11 was launched with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on board, and Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon. You witnessed other firsts with the maiden flights of a Boeing 747 and the Concorde. Golda Meir became the first female prime minister of Israel, and the implant of the first temporary artificial heart by Dr. Cooley. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour mixed entertainment and advocacy in a way that influenced a generation of satirical political shows. John Lennon composed "Give Peace a Chance," an anti-war song. Senator Ed Kennedy drove off a bridge into a tidal pond in Chappaquiddick, killing Mary Jo Kopechne. Later, two of her nephews would attend Bishop McDevitt. That summer, Woodstock was held in August in White Lake, New York, with 500,000 attendees, and become synonymous with the counterculture of the 60s. Gas was now 35 cents a gallon. A cost of a new house would average $15,500. While there were a number of external civil events which affected you as a senior at McDevitt, your life was very busy with the usual McDevitt happenings, some of which would assure your successful future, whatever that would entail. Father Leach became the new principal. You had magazine drives, homecoming, the youth festival, and drama events, which included the outstanding verse drama, Mary of Scotland. There were merit scholarship awards to be considered for your future, National Honor Society installations, and the establishment of a Human Relations Council. The Harrisburg Catholic Forensic League was a big win. A Brotherhood Assembly, Up With People, directed by Sister Mira and co-directed with Mr. Brixis and Sister Mary Victor, was held. There was even the opening of a coffee house, moderated by a faculty member, Sister Mary Louise. And in keeping with the times, you had the infamous publication of A Nickel's Worth, a counter newspaper which was called an underground paper. You helped McDevitt celebrate its 50th anniversary in 1968 to 1969, and this fall you will celebrate your 55th class reunion. With the class of 1969, please raise your hand or stand. The world in 1974 was tumultuous. I don't want anybody to have any bad feelings, but that was the year that I was born. There was a crippling energy crisis, protests, and riots for and against school busing, desegregation, and of course, looming over all of it, Watergate. Sadly, Egypt launched a coordinated attack with Syria against Israel, leading to the Yom Kippur War, which thankfully lasted only 18 days. You watched another first in air travel as the Concorde made its nonstop crossing of the Atlantic in record-breaking time, and first in space travel with Mariner 10 space probe reaching Mercury and close-up images of Jupiter sent back by Pioneer 10. A 55-mile-per-hour speed limit was imposed to preserve gas at an average cost of now 47 cents if you could get it. As the nationwide global recession manifested itself with long lines at gas pumps, President Nixon signed the Transatlantic Pipeline Authorization Act into law to help counter the effects of the OPEC embargo. Lucy, the hominid skeleton, 3 million years old, was discovered in Africa, changing the evolutionary teachings in archaeology. Your class would be the first to see the unfolding of the Watergate cover-up and the impeachment hearings for President Nixon, who resigned later that year. Inflation in the United States was 11.3%, the cost of a dozen eggs rose to 78 cents, and a new home to over $38,000. On a lighter note, you had movies that made you laugh like The Sting, or horrified you like The Exorcist. Television shows ran the gamut from All in the Family to The Waltons. McDevitt ensured that as students you were not always immersed in the consequences of all the political happenings and economic stress laid on your parents. You had a normal school life, homecoming, prom, drama and band, and athletic, academic, and religious events. Robert Fry was your band director, and The King and I, your fall musical. The Marine fitness team was inaugurated, and softball at McDevitt was in its infancy. Recently, you held your 50th class reunion and, in the style of Jeopardy, proposed a number of class trivia questions. In case you weren't paying attention, here are a few reminders. There were 6 sets of twins in your class. Bob Sariano had to do push-ups to pass Mr. Brooks' history class. Karen Klinger was captain of the color guard and president of band, and Quinn was the name of the janitor's German shepherd and unofficial watchdog. With the class of 1974, please raise your hand or stand. As the class of 1974 left McDevitt's halls, these words were memorialized in its valedictory speech and encompass all of Catholic High and Bishop McDevitt Golden Crusaders. Now our 4 years at McDevitt are suddenly memories. We have grown not just from the knowledge we've gained from our studies, but more importantly, from the knowledge we've gained from the people we've lived with. We have learned to accept others that differ from us and respect their opinions. We have allowed ourselves to be influenced by our parents, teachers, and friends. We have listened to and filtered out their advice and have formed our own opinions. But our 4 years at McDevitt have only been stepping stones in our search for truth and happiness in this world and eventually in the next. In order to be happy and to find truth, we must begin where we are. As you reflect after all these golden years, these lines still ring true. As paraphrased from our 100th anniversary book, God willing, it will ever be that you, as students, share in the McDevitt experience. Sing the words of the great alma mater and take them to your hearts. May your precepts fill this great land. Let them reach unto the sky. Lead your children on to heaven. Hail to thee, McDevitt High. Anniversary classes, I thank you for visiting us. Your presence is a true testament to our current students of Bishop McDevitt, what separates us from every school in this nation: our alumni, our faith, our family, our traditions, and our love for this school. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you coming back to visit us.
We're going to get our students back to their class so they can continue with their day, and then we have a lunch for you. Students, I'm going to ask you not to use the door on your left, my right. That's where the alumni will be. So at this time, seniors, back to homeroom. Please use the back door and the door on your right. Teachers, we will adjust first period slightly. I will come on the PA when it is time to move to first period. Juniors, please follow the seniors out. Sophomores, back to homeroom. Freshmen in the upper section, you can go